Hey everyone, Chris here. We've got the Wizard today. Now, the Wizard in the last time we saw it was playtest 7, and I'd say of all the classes from 2014, the Wizard got the fewest changes. We got a Wizard that looked very much like it did in 2014, and 4 subclasses from 2014 that all looked pretty close to the way they did in 2014. Biggest change was the Evoker had 2 of their features reversed, so you get potent spellcasting or potent cantrip earlier, and it had a little boost where it does half damage with cantrips that require attack rolls, and then the sculpt spells one was moved to level 6. That was really the biggest change we had. The savant features like divination savant and illusion savant, they all got a little boost where you got some extra spells in your spell book. Then the base wizard was mostly the same. They got expertise and a knowledge skill, which I like. I mean, the wizard is the big-brained spellcaster, so nice to have that. And then they had a memorize spell, which allowed you to switch out a prepared spell in a minute. And they've already revealed on TikTok, so I'm not revealing anything. That has been nerfed. It's now a short rest. So not a lot of changes expected for the wizard. But I'm going to say this, and I'll cut this out if it, for some reason, doesn't happen. But of course, it's definitely going to happen. There's going to be a surprise today, and that is you're going to see some new features on one of the subclasses. Brand new features that you never saw in the playtest either. They actually made some real changes, and they're starting. So let's unmute here.
Hello everyone, today we are talking about the Wizard.
The Wizard has all sorts of new magical goodies.
And I got my coffee.
Some in the class, but many of them in the spell chapter. The Wizard is the paramount collector of spells in D&D. They have the longest spell list of any class, and that list in the new player's handbook got even longer, which we were able to do partly because the spell chapter got even bigger, and many of those spells are for the wizard because spell access and spell versatility is the beating heart of the wizard class. And so
bread and butter.
Whereas other spellcasting classes, of course, also care about spells, but often their spellcasting is enhanced by a number of other features that they have that bring their distinctiveness, whereas the wizard's primary distinctiveness is a huge variety of spells at their fingertips. And so we just leaned into that even more. Just as in every class, we've leaned into what really makes a particular class shine, what makes it really exciting to the people who love playing that class. And so with the wizard, it is give us all the spells.
So much has changed with spells as well. There've been, there's a lot of quality of life improvements in so many of these spells. The wizard is consequently the most affected by that.
Exactly. And then the wizard has a number of new features and enhanced features that allow them to interact with that massive treasure chest of spells in the book with even greater versatility. So, for example, at first level, wizards now have the ability to change one of their cantrips every time they finish a long rest. No other class.
And that's from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. It was an optional class feature. So, and we've seen this with a number of optional class features from Tasha's, is they've been worked into the main class.
Has this capability to just every day be, no, I now know a different cantrip.
I changed my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, that's a great example of how we're leaning into that breadth and versatility that is such a distinctive aspect of the wizard and always has been as one of the classes that has been in the game the longest. We have also, at first level, added a new feature called Ritual Adept. Now, functionally, this feature is not new. What this feature does is it allows the wizard to cast as a ritual any ritual that is in the wizard's spellbook. I say it's not.
Yeah, and that's not a new feature because wizards have always been able to do that, but they buried that information in their text on spellcasting. Now, just I guess so that it's a little more obvious that it's there, they presented it as a unique feature.
Not functionally a new feature because Wizards in 2014 had that capability. We decided, though, to take that capability, which used to be inside the spellcasting feature, and we broke it out into its own class feature because we realized that there were a number of wizard players who were missing the fact that they had that feature, because the spellcasting feature has a lot going on in it, and it can actually be easy to miss this little section about, oh, and hey, by the way, you're really great at using rituals. And we thought that was an important enough part of the wizard's identity and really a separate bit of functionality from the base spellcasting feature that we broke it out into its own feature called, again,
And he's talking about one case of this, but this is something you see throughout the new player's handbook is there's a lot of detail or attention paid to presenting things so that they're easier for players to digest. So in a lot of cases, things haven't changed, but they're presented in a way that they're easier to read and absorb.
Ritual Adept.
Perfect.
At second level, gave a truly new feature to the wizard called Scholar. And here, just as we have in several of our other classes where we've given people a bit more versatility outside combat. Now, not that the wizard needed a whole lot of help in that realm, because wizards, as a result of having so much spell versatility, have access to a lot of non-combat spells.
Yeah.
But we also, with the wizard, wanted to do a better job of, in the game mechanics, highlighting that wizards are meant to be the consummate scholars. That a huge part of their identity is that they are bookish folk. And so the new Scholar ability allows the wizard to select a skill from a list in the feature and have expertise in that skill. And the skills on the list are like Arcana, History, etc. All skills.
So that's the one from the playtest I talked about in the intro. So I won't bother talking about it again. But basically, the playtest feature got published as is.
That are about being an expert in essentially an academic field. And we have often, in the story text for the wizard, talked about that aspect of wizards. We wanted to give the story some teeth in the rules, and hence the creation of the Scholar feature. Now, the wizard gets yet another brand new feature at 5th level, and this feature is called Memorize Spell. And again, leaning into the versatility of wizards, we gave them a bit more versatility. Memorize Spell now allows the wizard, when they finish a short rest, to swap out one of the level 1 or higher spells they have prepared for another one in their spell book. You know, if they know they have that one spell in their spell book that they really wish they had prepared, Memorize Spell will now allow them to do that.
And that's huge.
So I'm just going to throw up on the screen. This was the playtest version of Memorize Spell, and you can see it allows you to change your spell after 1 minute. So quite a change to make it once per short rest. So wizards getting toned down. You know, all the goodies get thrown on, like the barbarian and the rogue and the fighter we already saw. In fact, the rogue, I said, was probably the weakest class because its pile of goodies was a little bit smaller than the barbarian and the fighter. But the thing is the wizard is already at the top. It's the wizard. So, you know, from a health of the game standpoint, you don't want to be giving wizards too much.
For any type of combat, like potential combat encounter, but or you are running into like something that's happening in a dungeon and you need to find a way to like get through this situation. That's perfect. That's what the wizard should be good at.
Yes, exactly. Otherwise, the wizard in its bones is largely what people sort of know and love. We've made some tweaks in how we present some of the material in the wizard, But really the heart of the new material in the base class is even greater breadth and greater versatility. And then that sets up the 4 subclasses to be very well equipped to then do what they're great at, having such a firm, versatile base for their feature.
And if you haven't been, following so far, all the reveals and such, the 4 subclasses we're going to see are the Abjurer, the Diviner, the Evoker, and the Illusionist.
To be built on.
So one of the very first subclasses is the Abjurer. Tell me about this. This is the one that is a lot about defensive magic.
Yes, the Abjurer is at heart all about defending themselves and then ultimately also being able to defend others. And to aid them in their defensive capabilities, we've done a number of things both in the subclass itself, but also in the wizard's spell list. There are a number of spells that were previously not abjurations that now are.
Oh, interesting.
And we did this, because some of the spells we felt had been misclassified as other types of magic, and so we were correcting them, the spells themselves, making them abjurations. But this is also of practical importance to the Abjurer because it's casting abjuration spells that helps refresh their magical force field that absorbs damage.
Yeah.
And so that's another example of how the work that we've done in the spell chapter and in the wizard's spell list has a powerful effect on how this subclass functions as well as the other wizard subclasses.
Absolutely.
Each of the 4 wizard subclasses now has a brand new version of their savant feature. That feature used to give the wizard a discount on scribing spells of that school into their spell book.
Right.
Which were terrible features. So I am glad they're changed. The new features are good, but they're not amazing, but they're way, way better than what we had.
We found over the last decade that in actual play, this was rarely actually being used. Often people would forget they had it.
Yeah.
And even if they remembered they had it, it was not actually doing them a whole lot of good. So we wanted to give people something more concrete that not only would they enjoy, but also really help ensure that they were connected to their favorite school of magic. So in the Abjurer, Abjuration Savant right away gives you 2 more abjuration spells that you get to add to your spell book for free.
Okay.
And then every time you level up thereafter as a wizard, you get an additional abjuration spell for free. And so we've taken this shtick, and that shtick is now in all 4 of the wizard subclasses, ensuring that if you're an Abjurer, Evoker, Illusionist, or Diviner, you are guaranteed every time you level up to get at least 1 spell that is associated with your favorite school of magic.
Okay, perfect.
So that makes that feature in all 4 of the subclasses far more useful, and again, does some important work in making sure that you are actually connected to your favorite school. Now, in the Abjurer's Arcane Ward, which is really their signature class feature, this is the feature where they get to conjure up a protective field of magic, and it can essentially take their damage for them.
Yeah.
We made if a person's reading fast, they might miss it when they get to the feature, but we made a significant change to how the Arcane Ward works, and that is if your Abjurer has resistance, vulnerability, or immunity, those are now all applied before the Arcane Ward takes damage.
And that was not in the playtest. So in the playtest, the only difference from Arcane Ward from the 2014 Player's Handbook was that they said you needed to use a spell with a spell slot. So the trick where you use Eldritch Adept to take Armor of Shadow so you can cast Mage Armor at will to refresh your ward wouldn't work. So a nerf, right? But they have added that your ward now is impacted by your resistances and vulnerabilities. Now, you usually don't have any vulnerabilities. Usually you just have resistances. So that is technically a buff that the Arcane Ward is getting.
You'll be sad in the rare case of you having vulnerability and it being applied first. But most of the time, what this is going to mean is it's if you have acquired resistance to a particular damage type, it now means your Arcane Ward can benefit from that resistance.
Absolutely.
And we then also applied that improvement to the projected ward feature that you get later, where you then have the ability to share your protection with friends. But in that case, rather than it being your resistance or vulnerability or immunity that's applied, it's theirs. So if, let's say, you're protecting your friend who has poison resistance and they take poison damage, their resistance to poison damage will kick in first, then the Arcane Ward will take the remaining damage. And then if there's still damage left over, then only then will it reach the person who's being protected.
The benefit of this is if you have an abjuration spell that can give you resistances like that, and you cast it, you are not only funneling energy into your shield, essentially, but you are also applying those resistances that spell would have to that damage at the same time. You're kind of gaming the system constantly. You're growing your shield and then making it more resistant at the same time, all in one.
Before you get to your level 14 feature, you actually get a brand new feature as an Abjurer called Spellbreaker. At level 10, Spellbreaker now makes it so that you always have the counterspell and dispel magic spells prepared.
And that is a change from the playtest as well. So in the playtest, all you got was dispel magic prepared. So he's saying you're going to get both counterspell and dispel magic prepared now.
And you can cast dispel magic as a bonus action. And when you cast...
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, was that also... No, it was also a bonus action in the playtest.
Either of the spells with the spell slot, if the spell fails to either counter another spell or dispel a spell, your spell slot is not expended.
And that's new. So in the playtest, you got the enhancement to casting Dispel Magic, but nothing about if you try to dispel a spell of higher than 3rd level. Of course, there's a ability check involved, and if you fail the ability check, your Dispel Magic doesn't work. And he's saying if that happens, you don't expend the spell slot.
This is the wizard who not only is, another spellcaster does not want to get into a spell duel with the Abjurer, but also Dispel Magic being a bonus action means if you're in one of those situations in the game where, sometimes there'll be a battle where there's a MacGuffin with some kind of magical protection, and most other characters would have to use their entire action to try to break that protection on it. The Abjurer can just walk up as a bonus action, try to shatter the spell, and still take their action to do something else.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, so Spellbreaker is a really exciting new feature for this subclass. And then at level 14, the Abjurer still gets their spell resistance that they had before.
That's very fun. Again, you're like honing in on what makes the Abjurer, that wish fulfillment.
All right, so that's the Abjurer. And basically what we got were tweaks, right? If you like the 2014 Abjurer, it's going to be very similar. And if you looked at the playtest, it's going to be similar to that as well. But there are some changes, but nothing major, nothing mind-blowing happened with the Abjurer.
That fantasy that you would have concrete.
Absolutely. We then had a similar approach with the Diviner, because the Diviner was in such fantastic shape in 2014. A very beloved subclass, a very effective subclass. So the main things that people who love playing Diviners have to look forward to is the improved Divination Savant, which, like the Savant spells and the other subclasses, make sure that you always get some divination spells as you level up as a wizard. When you get up to level 10 and get the third eye ability, that you can now use this as a bonus action rather than an action. And we did this because we wanted you to be able to unlock the cool senses that this feature gives you, even in the midst of a battle, and not lose your whole turn doing it. We also fine-tuned and upgraded the options within the third eye. So the dark vision option, for instance, now extends to 120 feet. We did this partly because we now have some of the species in the book who have dark vision of 120 feet. We also combined some of the abilities that were present before under the third eye into one called simply now See Invisibility, which allows you now to cast the See Invisibility spell without expending a spell slot. So some nice quality of life improvements, particularly.
Yeah, so I'm just going to remind you what was in 2014. So the third eye then took he's talking about the bonus action and the action. I think that is a minor change, really negligible, because the thing is this feature lasts a long time, right? You finish your rest, you activate it, and it's going to last till your next rest, and then you do it again. So I mean, I guess you could, if you wanted to, wait to decide which option you choose until you know which one you need, and then activate it, and then use a bonus action. And that maybe might be an enhancement. But the big enhancements are in the choices themselves. So the dark vision range has been doubled. It was 60 feet before. The See Invisibility option before was 10 feet. So the See Invisibility spell is going to be way, way, way better than that.
Particularly in that third eye feature that you get at level 10.
In the playtest for all of this, does combat feel significantly faster? It just feels like there's a new momentum because so many things are being shifted to a bonus action. Like it just feels like things are going to be moving so much quicker in D&D now.
So it varies depending on what character.
Yeah, I'm glad Jeremy's giving an honest answer here. I did the playtest a lot. And we've already seen that a lot of the rules from the playtest have just carried over, and we did not find combat was faster. In some cases, I would say it was more fun, but not faster.
Do. And also some things that used to be bonus actions are now actions or are now a part of some other action.
Right.
So it really is been just a large holistic shuffling of things to try to get them to be in the right part of the action economy to keep things moving, but also to make it so that things feel like they are costing the right part of the action economy.
Right.
Often we'll make the change because something as an action just wasn't pulling its weight. And so then we either beefed it up so that it did pull its weight as an action, or we turned it into a bonus action or a reaction or not an action at all, and it just became something that happens as part of another action or at the start or end of your turn. And so there are tweaks like that we made within the Wizard, but through the entire game.
Okay, perfect.
So how about next we talk about the Evoker?
If you love dealing damage.
Okay, so just to wrap up, the Diviner saw very few changes, minor tweaks. The Savant feature changing, probably the biggest change. But if you like the Diviner, and a lot of people do, it's one of my favorite subclasses for Wizard. Like, I love playing with Portent. It's fun. No changes. It's going to be the same as it always was.
damage, and also not destroying your entire party, this is the subclass for you. So I'm terrified of what might have improved, because it was already very strong.
So yeah, the Evoker and the Diviner were two of the most solid subclasses in the 2014 Player's Handbook, just in terms of delivering what they needed to deliver for their identity.
Yeah.
And so because of that, in each of these subclasses, our job was mostly don't mess anything up. And so in the Evoker, they get their Evocation Savant feature now. So again, like the other wizard subclasses, they're going to get supplied by evocation spells throughout their career as a wizard. But then we did make a major enhancement in the Potent Cantrip feature. Potent Cantrip used to pertain only to saving throws, and specifically saving throw cantrips. The issue is there were not a ton of those for evokers to use in the 2014 Player's Handbook, and even subsequent to that book, there were only a few. And so what we did is we've made it so that Potent Cantrip now applies not just to cantrips you cast that involve a saving throw, but also ones that involve an attack roll. And now, when you cast those at a creature and you miss or the creature succeeds on its saving throw, you still deal half damage to them.
That's amazing.
This is really meant to point at...
I mean, I'm not sure I agree it's amazing. It's okay. Potent Cantrip is okay, and you getting it first now gives it to you when it probably is going to apply more often, because at lower levels, you're casting fewer leveled spells. You're casting more cantrips, just because you have fewer spell slots. So getting it earlier does make it something that you're going to get more use out of. But, I mean, cantrip damage is not high, and you give half cantrip damage, and that's really not high.
At the fact that the Evoker is in many ways the premier battle magician in the game, and better than pretty much anyone can ensure that they're going to deal a little bit of damage every time they take a turn if they're casting a damaging spell.
And this happens sooner, doesn't it?
This happens at level 3 when you get the subclass.
Yeah.
Now, the wizard subclasses, which used to kick in at level 2, now all kick in at level 3.
Right.
Again, because now all classes get their subclass at level 3.
Perfect.
Otherwise, the Evoker is the amazingly powerful and effective subclass that it always was.
Overchannel. Sculpt spell.
Yes. Yeah, with Sculpt spell continuing to be a really pivotal part of the Evoker's kit, because if you have a subclass that's all about bringing the boom, it sure is nice if they're not blowing up their friends.
Now, there are some significant changes to a subclass that I actually quite love that are new.
All right, so that's the Evoker. If you read the playtest, it looks like playtest stuff basically went through, which, again, was... Although they did switch those levels for Potent Cantrip and Sculpt spells, the features all look really familiar. They're just slightly different order, but we got some tweaks, and that's mostly it. And now we're going to get to the one that had the big changes, and I mean changes from the playtest.
New and exciting, and that is for the Illusionist.
Yes, the Illusionist, in addition to getting their Illusion Savant feature at level 3, then right away has in the subclass 2 new features. There's one of them.
So these are pretty good, I think, especially the one he's going to talk about at level 3. So Illusionist at level 3 in 2014 they got the minor illusion cantrip, and they could add sound to it. Or if they were doing minor illusion for sound, they could add a visual to it. So they could do both. Not a great starting feature for wizard subclass, considering what some of the other subclasses were getting at that level, like this is when the Diviner gets portent. And then the Illusionist gets a minor enhancement to a cantrip. So they went all out, making level 3 more exciting for Illusionists. And I'll let Jeremy Crawford tell you what they did.
Is also at level 3 called Improved Illusions. And then at level 6, they get a brand new feature called Phantasmal Creatures.
Yeah.
Following the Unearthed Arcana series and getting feedback on the Illusionist and also in our own playtests of the Illusionist, we felt that this subclass needed more. And so one of our goals with these new features is to make it so that the Illusionist is actually the best subclass at casting illusions. And so the Improved Illusions feature that they now get at level 3 is all about that. First, they can now cast their illusion spells without providing verbal components. We did this because we wanted an illusionist, if they want to be able to create illusions silently.
That's a nice enhancement. What that means is, if you are hiding, you will not be revealed by casting your spells, assuming you're casting illusion spells. That's a big enhancement. And also it means you don't care about a silent spell. You can be in the middle of a silent spell and still cast your illusion spell. So that's a big enhancement. But he's not done.
And in especially exploration and social situations in the game, this will be immensely helpful because now, the spell might have a somatic component, and so the illusionist might be twiddling their fingers, but doesn't have to say anything aloud. And so they might be able to cause an illusion to suddenly appear in a situation, and no one will know that it was that person over there who did it. We've also made it in this same feature that any of the illusionist's illusion spells that has a range of at least 10 feet now has that range increased by 60 feet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Huge range increase to illusion spells. So you're casting them without verbal components and at a much, much greater range. That's a big enhancement to casting illusion spells for the illusionist.
And so that also now means that illusionists can create their illusions in a much larger range than other characters can.
Be way more tactical about distractions and things like that.
Exactly. If someone else, has to have the illusion just within 10 feet, the illusionist can have their illusion 70 feet over there. And giving them much more flexibility in how they essentially mess with people in a particular situation.
And harder to tell from that distance that is an illusion, right? Like, just as if I was a dungeon master, like if there was an illusion of someone 60 feet away, like how good is your your visual acuity at that point for you to identify that is fake?
Yes.
Yeah, significantly less.
But Improved Illusions has even more.
Okay.
So what it did before is it gave you the minor illusion cantrip.
Right.
So that also is included in the feature. That cantrip does not count against the number of cantrips that you know as a wizard. It just like it did in 2014, this feature lets you create both a visual and an audible illusion simultaneously with minor illusion.
So what he's telling you is that we're getting these big boosts to casting illusion spells, but they actually didn't take the original feature away. You still get the original feature. They just added all this other stuff on top of it. So Improved Illusions is a big, big buff for illusionists. We're going to get a brand new feature at level 6. And notice he didn't say brand new feature at level 10 or level 14. So illusory reality lovers, relax. You're okay. You're okay.
And you can cast minor illusion as a bonus action. And then at level 6, you get...
Oh, did I miss that? Hang on. Yeah, and you can cast it as a bonus action. That's another improvement. I had missed that one. You are going to be able to cast as a bonus action, which means you're probably going to be using minor illusion a lot more than you did previously. It's right there on my screen, and I missed it. So thank you, Jeremy.
Phantasmal creatures.
Yeah, this is really amazing.
And here, we wanted to give illusionists an ability that had a bit more combat teeth and also really helped fulfill that fantasy of, I create an illusory bear and it roars and creates havoc, and in addition to creating a distraction, can actually fight in battle. And so what Phantasmal Creatures does is it gives the Illusionist the Summon Beast and Summon Fey spells. The Illusionist always now has these two spells prepared. And by the way, here's another great example of how we were able to lean on the expanded spell chapter of this book to enhance our classes and subclasses, because Summon Beast and Summon Fey weren't in the 2014 Player's Handbook. They're new spells in the 2024 Player's Handbook, and so the Illusionist can now benefit from them. And the Illusionist now has the option of casting these two spells as normal, of conjuring up a beast or a Fey creature, but the Illusionist also has the option of changing the school of magic on these two spells from conjuration to illusion. And
keep in mind, that means no verbal component and enhanced range.
Illusionist does that, you can cast the illusory version without expending a spell slot. But if you do that, the illusion has half as many hit points as the non-illusory version would have.
Right.
But what this
and this, I assume the inspiration for this new feature, because this is a brand new feature, we've never seen this before. It reminded me. I pulled up my 3.5 rules, and there was a spell called Shadow Conjuration that thematically is very similar to this Phantasmal Creature. So there is a precedent for this feature.
Basically
but
means...
you can still opt to do the full hit points if you want.
Yes, you can. But what this means is an Illusionist can, once they reach level 6, cast Summon Beast and Summon Fey, each of those spells, once per day without expending a spell slot, as long as you summon the illusory version of the Beast or the Fey.
Right.
So this is going to be a ton of fun, super useful, not only in combat, but even in exploration situations. If, say, you need one of these creatures to show up because it can fly, or, go get that thing over there, or, especially, hey, it's an illusion, don't feel bad about it.
I know.
It go step on that trap.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking is, if you cast a spell without expending a spell slot, you cast it at its lowest level. And once I get to a certain point, level 2 Summon Beast spell with half hit points, it's not going to be useful in combat. But if I want to, trigger a trap, then I could totally use it.
This is walking through the Tomb of Horrors one by one.
Yes. So this feature, combined with improved illusions, is really going to bring the Illusionist to life, I think, in a way we haven't seen in 5th edition.
And you're using the stat blocks that are in those summoning spells, but you can make it look like anything you want, really, because you're an illusionist, right? Like, that's the flavor of it.
Because, you can, with these spells, flavor how they look.
Yeah.
Now then, at level 10, you still get the Illusory Self feature, which is the Illusionist's defensive ability, but a really nice set of enhancements we've made to the feature is, first, we've made it so that it's triggered by you being hit by an attack rather than attack roll being simply made at you.
Yeah.
So you won't even be tempted to use it until it's really necessary for you to use it. And then the other thing we did is we made it so that if you want, you can restore your use of this feature by expending a spell slot of level 2 or higher.
That's huge.
And both those enhancements were in the playtest. So basically, he's telling you that illusory self in the playtest is the illusory self in the player's handbook.
And especially at higher levels, wizards have a whole lot of spell slots.
Yeah.
And so the illusionists, if they want to, can farm their spell slots to get more uses of illusory self.
That makes you a very defensible character.
And so all of these changes combined mean in many ways the illusionist is a new subclass.
Yeah.
Because really the only part of the subclass that is largely the same as it was before is its capstone ability at level 14, illusory reality.
Which has always been amazing.
Yeah, and that's...
And this is a amazing feature. I kind of suspected they would nerf it because it's so good. They did not nerf it. It's as is. So yeah, the illusionist. The one thing about the playtest, like the wizard is my favorite class, and it's not just the mechanics. The thematics of it are my favorite. I like the big-brained spell guy. That's the guy I like when I read the books for fantasy. Or watch the shows for fantasy, or play my role-playing games of fantasy. That's what I always gravitate to, regardless of whether it's mechanically the strongest or not. And it just so happened Wizard happened to also be the mechanically the strongest. But you're reading the playtest, not a lot of new toys, right? Like, and it's not even that. I wanted it to be more powerful, but I would have liked seeing changes just to try something new rather than the thing I've been playing for 10 years. And there wasn't a lot of that. So I was very encouraged to read Illusionist and see it was entirely new. So I do have a new toy to play with the wizard.
We didn't want to touch that because it is such an iconic ability of the subclass of being able to, and this is the example we give in the feature itself of create an illusory bridge with, a spell that's able to create an illusion like that, and then use this feature to say, nah, it's a real bridge.
Yeah.
And have you and your companions cross it, and then, maybe get other people, your foes, to try to follow you, and then, whoops, it's back to being an illusion.
I have been up to many shenanigans with that particular feature, both in villains and as a player. If you wanted to be a really nasty villain, you could have an entire room that is there's a spiked pit below, and you create the illusion of a floor that is real, and then if things pop off, you just cause everything to fall. Yeah, there's 1,000 uses for that. It's so good. And we also have more guidance about illusion magic as well, correct?
Yes. So in the rules glossary, there is now a section on illusions, and that section addresses some of the more common questions that come up about illusions.
And this is great because, illusion magic has always been the one where it's there's so much left in the hands of the DM. That getting additional guidance is very helpful.
Simple things like how are they affected by the environment around them, but also as we reviewed all of the illusion spells in the book's massive spell chapter, we made sure to add in clarifications anywhere we felt the spell could be clearer about how its illusion worked. But also, again, some of that clarity isn't in those spells themselves, but in the new glossary entry on illusions. And that glossary, which I know we'll talk about in more depth in another video, really is going to be everyone's buddy at the game table.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about it now, not only because of the illusion section for illusionists, but also how much of that rules glossary will be useful to wizard players and players of other spellcasters, because that rules glossary is going to define all the areas of effect that your spells deal with, all the conditions that your spells apply. There's guidance when it comes to spellcasting in the rules glossary on teleportation, on telepathy, and on being dead, and what that means, which maybe when we get to the cleric video, we can dive into a little bit the rules glossary section on being dead.
Perfect. It's a great tease for the...
These kinds of clarifications, it really do make the book easier to read. Because think about telepathy. How many things give you telepathy? There's species that give you telepathy. There's subclasses that give you telepathy. There's spells that give you telepathy. So think about one of them right now, and just off the top of your head, do you need to share a common language? Because half of them do, half of them don't. You don't know, right? You're going to have to look it up every time. Well, the rules glossary is going to explain those kinds of things, and that's very helpful. I'm glad they're going to do a whole video on it, because there is a lot to talk about with the glossary.
The cleric video.
Yes.
I'll have to make that next. All right, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, and that's the wizard all done. So, going to give some other information about the wizard. So this is up on D&D Beyond. We're just going to cover some of the changes that weren't covered in the video. The number of prepared spells is now a fixed number in the wizard table. It used to be based on your intelligence and your level. The cantrip, you can use your spell book as a spellcasting focus. That's not a big deal, but sure. Let's see. Backing up your spellbook is faster and cheaper. The part here on wizard subclasses doesn't give us any new information. The memorized spell, we already talked about that. Spell mastery. Here's another change. This was in the playtest, but chosen spells now must have a casting time of 1 action. So that is a big nerf to this ability, because the spells that I always chose were Shield and Misty Step. Hardly had to think about it. And I can't take either of those spells now, because one of them is a reaction and the other one is a bonus action. Only spells with a casting time of 1 action. So a nerf to the wizard. And that's all the new information. Pretty much everything else I went over in the video, because there wasn't as much to cover with the wizard. Other than the illusionist, not a whole lot of surprises. The wizard is looking very much like it did in 2014. There are actual nerfs on the wizard. A lot of classes didn't have any nerfs. I had somebody mention to me the other day, it's too bad about the rogue and getting nerfed. Rogue didn't get nerfed. Rogue got boosted. It just didn't get boosted as much as the fighter and the barbarian. So it's, pile of goodies was a little bit smaller than their pile of goodies. The wizard did not get a pile of goodies. The illusionist did, but the base wizard is going to look very much like it did before. You get a couple tweaks and a few minor boosts, but some other things kind of scale back. And same with the subclasses. But Illusion looks fun to play, and I'm interested in trying that. And tomorrow we're going to be talking about the Ranger. A lot of questions about the Ranger, so I'm glad we're going to get some answers for them. So I will have a video, as always, as soon as possible after they have posted it. I watch it live, react to it live, and then I bust my butt trying to get it out to you as soon as I can. All right, so I will talk to you tomorrow.